Hello, and welcome to the Warwick Words History Festival. My name is Adam Busiakiewicz, and I am a researcher of Warwick Castle and its earls. Since I can't be with you here today in person, I thought I would actually tell you a story, mostly about one of the most macabre and, quite frankly, spookiest documents I have ever found during my time as a researcher. About a few years ago, when I was doing research for my doctorate at Warwick University, I came across a very interesting and very strange document hidden in a bundle of bills. These set of documents actually belonged to Anne Greville, the fourth Countess of Warwick, who lived during the Victorian period. Anne was born in 1829 and died in 1903. And what I found in her box of bills and letters was, very unexpected indeed. Do you believe in ghosts? No, me neither. But it's quite obvious that Anne did. And stuffed within this enormous bundle, about this big, I found in a purple envelope something very unexpected indeed. On the front of it had written something about painting of a London house, which interested me a great deal. So I opened it, I broke open the wax seal and found two documents. But these were no ordinary documents relating to a correspondence or even to bills or receipts for random objects, but were in fact transcripts of seances. For any of you who don't know, a seance is effectively a conversation with a ghost. And although we no longer today many of us might no longer believe in ghosts, seances, this attempt to contact the spiritual world, was in fact incredibly popular during the 19th century. One of the most interesting books to actually deal with the history of spiritualism in England was written by a very famous author indeed. In 1926, Arthur Conan Doyle actually wrote a history of the interest in the supernatural here in Britain, and indeed he attributes it to an import from America. In 1852, a certain Mrs. Haydon actually imported into London's high society the fashion for table rapping, as it was known, and largely also known as seances, these attempts to contact the spiritual world, the dead. And indeed, Mrs. Haydon was so famous throughout London that all of the great and highest people of society started to attend her evening events, where she and other members of her family would host seances where they would attempt to contact the dead. So in a way, it seems that our Countess, Anne, was very much caught up in this fervour. The Victorians too, I believe, had this great sense of their place in history. We only have to think of the Victorian period as this great era of historical romanticism, Sir Walter Scott. And so you might imagine that a countess with a historic title. She was also, of course, the owner of Warwick Castle, one of the most beautiful, one of the most ancient buildings in all of the land, might have been interested, perhaps, in trying to contact, perhaps, some of the ancestors of her ancient home. So what exactly did Anne, Countess of Warwick, say to the ghosts that she met in her seance? Well, the answer might surprise you. We actually already knew that Anne was interested in ghosts. Anne's eldest son, Francis, later the fifth Earl of Warwick, actually wrote in his memoir exactly why Anne was interested in ghosts. And this is what he said. Like many other very old houses, Warwick Castle is said to be haunted, but for reasons that are doubtless perfectly satisfactory, no ghost has ever honoured me with a visit. My mother, Anne, used to hear strange and uncanny noises. I never succeeded in doing as much as that. And it's quite clear from actually reading these documents that Anne is trying to encourage these ghosts to stop making noises at night and basically to try and stop them disturbing her and her family. The first document is very strange. It is written in the so-called automatic handwriting technique, which is where you sit around a table and a person with their hand is supposed to almost freely draw onto a piece of paper exactly what the ghost is saying through them. They are, in a way, trying to channel the spirit. The handwriting is incredibly messy, and it took me quite a few minutes to work out what on earth this document was when I found it. The first sentence of this document was actually incredibly creepy. It reads, "Leave all to the future research. The power at work is not that of the mortals in the castle here." And the ghost that Anne spoke to actually is given a name. We read, "The spirit of me, called Edward Jameson, is the one of these who now haunts this place. The ment he possess, hearing of words, seeing and thought, and being in power as a spirit, be read with a material atmosphere." This is all very creepy stuff. That was the first document. And the second document I actually found is a more straightforward question and answer session with the ghost, as you might imagine. And this too is incredibly creepy. We read, firstly, that a spirit much patient will on the truth write. It seems that, I believe at least, they were using some sort of letters on a board, perhaps some early form of Ouija board, to try and work out, or to try and allow this spirit to actually speak with his own words. And it's very telling what questions they're asking the spirit. Supposedly this Edward Jameson has a secret, as all ghosts do. And supposedly this chap was actually a former servant in the castle, but he had stolen and hidden something in a far-off room. And effectively what Anne is trying to do here is to try and work out this secret, and that perhaps if Edward tells the secret, he'll stop bothering them, which is incredibly creepy. It seems that Anne wasn't even alone here. She was with, perhaps I believe, one of her friends, Lady Ashburton, who was also a great collector of art like Anne was, and also perhaps with Anne's eldest son, Lord Brooke, Francis, who I mentioned to you before. So I guess the big question is did the seance work? Did Edward Jameson tell his secret? Well, the honest truth is we don't know. It seems that they actually searched through several rooms of the castle, rooms which are now, in fact, offices of the general manager there. So I wonder if the ghosts ever pay him a visit. I hope so. And indeed, it's so strange that Anne was seemingly so desperate to get these ghosts to go away that she even asks them, will praying for them set them free? And today we might have very strange ideas about ghosts, that they don't particularly inhabit the realms of religion and Christianity, but it's quite clear that in the 19th century the supernatural world very much was focused in around, ideas of religion and faith. One particular figure that Anne, we know, actually invited to Warwick Castle to come and perform in these seances was an archdeacon from Rugby, a man called Archdeacon Coley. And this is what Francis wrote about him in his memoir, that Archdeacon Coley, who was so very well known in Africa, came to the castle several times and held seances in the oak bedroom, a dark and rather gloomy chamber in the same corridor as my own room. He brought a medium from Birmingham, and I believe they raised or saw a little girl carrying flowers. I can only hope they were satisfied. So it's very interesting to consider that certainly in the 19th century their ideas of ghosts were very different from what we might have today. And unfortunately these two seance manuscripts, these transcripts indeed, just end without giving any real indication of whether Edward Jameson ever gave up his secret. And to end, I thought I would end with a lovely little sentence from, again, her son's memoir, who I think gives, one of the most final thoughts on what the role of history and the role of Warwick Castle had in all of these supernatural imaginings. He wrote, "I have learned to believe that if you are susceptible to influences and manifestations, Warwick Castle can supply you all you need, while if you are not responsive, you can pass the quietest of times, days and nights, even in the oak bedroom that spirits are said to favour. My own ability to see things has occasioned me no regret." So So, if you'd like to find out more about Anne Greville's seance, then I do recommend heading over to ourwarwickshire.org, where you will actually be able to read the transcript in full. I do hope you've enjoyed listening, and do come and visit us here at the Warwick Words History Festival next spring, we hope.